Welcome to the studio at That Nerd Show. I'm Marcus Blake, and we're doing a virtual film festival interview from the Lake County Film Festival. And I am speaking with directors Carolina Monnerat and Theodore Collatos over the film Queen of Lapa, a very fascinating documentary about Luana Muniz, who is a transgender sex worker and stuff. And I will be the first to admit I did not know anything about this when I got a screener and had to look some things up. It was incredibly fascinating about her life and struggles and everything that they deal with there. What brought you to this project?
Many aspects of this, personal, and then also just the interest in Luana. But where Carolina grew up is where the trans sex workers work, and at the end of the block, and they're very just naturally integrated into the community. And we're married, and we would go there, you know, year after year, especially during that time period in like 2009, 10-ish.
Right.
And it was just something that interests us, of just the kind of the natural kind of positive integration into the community. And then we got to talking to Carol's dad about it, and then it turned out that he had a small part in why that occurred. And so from there, it just kind of developed.
Yeah, so then we learned more about Luana and decided to try to meet her. And when we met her, we were so amazed by her history of activism in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro specifically. The house, we didn't know that she had that house, and we knew that we needed to tell the story. So we asked her if we could do a film, a documentary, and she said yes, which is a real honor, since a lot of major outlets, news outlets all over the world have tried to do things with her, and she is very attentive to how the story is told, because so many times you watch work about that the trans sex work community, it's very exploitive, and we were really honing in with her that we would not do that. We would just be a fly on the wall and just tell the story by creating no script at all, just letting them tell their stories.
Well, from our perspective as press, I mean, we love getting documentaries where we virtually know nothing about the subject, and to learn something and to open our eyes. And this one, for this film festival, that was this documentary for me. But I thought it was kind of interesting. You talk about it being exploitive and why she won't, let other outlets interview her and stuff. I think that's kind of the case, in dealing with the transgender lifestyle anyway, especially here in the U.S. where it's still kind of frowned upon. I mean, we're getting better about it, but her activism, do you feel like it was out of necessity, or do you feel like her personality has always been that? Because I kind of, in watching the film, felt like her personality, she's a very strong-willed personality. So it kind of goes with being an activist.
Yeah.
Do you want to say?
Sure, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for her, it was just an organic process of living life. Each decade was a different kind of a transition for her as a person, spiritually and psychologically. And so when we met her, she was kind of like fully actualized and had a mission to really create a foundation for people to be safe and work and just kind of live free and safe, really. Yeah. And so, it was a very organic thing, like living life. And when we kind of drop in on her, it's like she's at the fully realized Luana, I guess.
Yeah, but if you think about her early days when she really started to create this revolution, I think it was out of a necessity of staying alive. Can you imagine? She was a trans sex worker doing a military dictatorship in Brazil. So I think that, yes, a lot of Brazilian people have that fire in them anyways, because living there can be so hard. And she definitely is a special human being that really put into action that fire and seeing all of the injustices towards her community, and she had to do something. Okay.
I'm sure, for you, there were so many fascinating elements of telling this story, but what was probably the most fascinating to you about her life? And I'll start with you, Carolina.
I think to me, something is that is that she really created and installed this sense of pride and just pride about who you are. And especially like when you think even just of sex workers, they can be seen as such a negative type of profession all over the world. And what she created for the community is just be proud. You have a job, be happy, and don't be a victim. Don't act like a victim. And even when more often they are victims of violence that people usually wouldn't receive upon their day-to-day. So it's just like her relentless sense of optimism towards life.
Yeah. How about you, Theodore?
I mean, just piggybacking off of that, I guess I'll speak just a little bit logistically that, you know, she would set up programs for the girls and therapy, you know, therapists would come and she would negotiate with like local businessmen and banks and things like this to like really just enable everyone to have like a really three-dimensional life on every level financially and as much health as she could provide. And she made these contacts by just being herself.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting like in Brazil, you need to like basically rent an ambulance if you're going to get an ambulance. And she went out of her way to become friends with ambulance drivers and just things like that are just blew us away.
That was another thing I kind of noticed that, and I know, I mean, here in America, it's still very conservative when we're dealing with, you know, prostitution and that kind of lifestyle, even though everybody does it, but in other nations are more forward thinking about it. Her taking on this, I guess, the right word I'm looking for, all the outside influences that you kind of need. It just, for her, it's about them. This is a job, but you still need healthcare. You still need someone to talk to. Everything about that. And I thought that was kind of just inspirational because, I mean, you don't have that here in America. You know, everything always has to fly underneath the radar, and here you have a transgender community doing it. I am not that familiar with the political climate in Brazil nowadays. Because I don't cover politics anymore. Do they still, let me rephrase this question. Are she still facing some of the same uphill battles that she always has? I mean, has it changed dramatically and made it easier, or is it still kind of the same as it was 10, 20 years ago?
It's not the same, definitely not, because of her. You know, right now it is considered an occupation, not a profession, but an occupation. So what it means is that you cannot be arrested if you are on the streets soliciting sex for work. But unfortunately, our current president has really drove things backwards a bunch. He is very conservative and very much a Trump fan. And, you know, unfortunately right now, the homicide rates towards the LGBTQ community in Brazil is the highest in the world. And the president is giving space for people to commit these crimes under the laws of, you know, of God and religion. So it's going backwards very much so this past few years with the current administration.
Okay. So what do you find is probably the most disturbing thing that you, in telling her story, that you came across, besides the usual, you know, discrimination? Carolina? The
most disturbing thing?
Yeah.
Well, I think a few things. A is just, you know, we tell a little bit in this movie, but we heard more from the girls than we did in put in the film. The amount of violence that they suffered, it's absurd. It's just really, literally people trying to kill them. And then beyond that, you know, we were really hopeful that Brazilian people would watch this film. We really wanted to celebrate Luana in Brazil, and we got denied by every festival, pretty much everywhere. And this currently also because of the current administration, the Bolsonaro, the president, cut funds to all cultural endeavors. So the movie theaters cannot show films that have anything to do with the LGBTQ narrative, and it just feels like we're back into living in in the 60s or the 20s, not 60s. So that's really disturbing to me.
Yeah. Very Hitler-esque of him to do things like that.
Yeah.
What was her? Has she seen this film?
No, it's really tragic. So she passed away just a few months after we finished filming, and it's heartbreaking that she never got to see it.
What is again, not knowing anything really about it, did someone kind of step up to the plate and take over for her and her community?
Yes, in a way. So Luana was like obviously a force of nature, and she really, changed a lot of girls' lives over many generations. And one thing that we really saw is how we call it, like, she's created little Luanas. And so, each girl will go out into the world and she'll kind of represent that kind of Luana way. And so, for instance, some of them, have little houses or Airbnbs that kind of function in a similar way of safety and empowerment. And so, there's kind of like, like, I'm not getting the right words, but like when a boat goes through the water and like there's this kind of these waves that go by, there's this kind of movement of culturally, I guess, that she left behind, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I see what you're getting at. In doing some research on this too, I mean, it's been getting wonderful reviews, and I see why. What has probably been the biggest? Actually, we've got a short time here, so I want to get back to our last question and our nerdy question before we send you on to your other interview. So what we generally ask is, like I said, it's a very nerdy question, and it's this: if you could have a weapon of choice or a superpower from within the nerd universe to fight the forces of evil, what would you choose for yourself?
A vote that counts. How's that? Yeah, get rid of the electoral college.
I pretty much would have to second it too. Just a weapon that actually forces democracy and takes the electoral college off of the table.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. So there's no denying he won the popular vote. There's no denying that. He won by 3 million, it's, very true. Very appropriate for this time. Well, I want to congratulate you guys on your documentary. Again, it was very, very fascinating. I'm glad that I know more about what's going on down there and her and stuff, and how she is an icon. Good luck with it I'm assuming you're still on the film festival circuit, and anxious to see where it ends up for you guys in your next project. So.